Okay, so I want to have a conversation about anxiety. And I think that if we can give people very, very simple metaphors that help us understand what these things are that sometimes seem much more complex than they need to be, that it makes the journey a lot easier. So I like to do that. I like to use, and sometimes, people don't resonate with the metaphors, but most of the time, most people do. Um, so, anxiety, what is it? Well, we've talked about this a couple different ways, but normally there's two simple explanations that something is happening and you are actually in danger. Now, you may be in danger on a wide range of things. Remember, as human beings, we have abstract memories, abstract imaginations that basically allow us to be thinking about a lot of things, including our past, including our future, including an abstract version of now. Unlike a dog that has a memory of 15 to 20 seconds, we're rehashing, we're holding a lot of things. And so that gives us a lot of things that aren't even real that we can chew on and we can feel the way it seems to us, even though we're still sitting on the couch at home. So there's two major reasons for anxiety. One, you're actually in danger. That's a good signal. We don't want to get rid of that signal. That I want to know about that. If I'm in danger, I want that signal coming on board. The second reason for anxiety is that because we have this advanced abstract memory that can still be in the past, we basically have a programming of defensive behavior. In other words, something has happened in the past, normally some form of emotional conditioning or trauma, something that we either experienced or that was modeled to us by somebody else that has experienced it. And we have upregulated, here's that word again, upregulation of some form of fight, flight, freeze, or disconnection. And we haven't completed that cycle yet. So that energy is still on board trying to protect and trying to do its job, actually. The problem as human beings that we run into is when that defense mechanism actually begins giving us situations where it's blocking our flow in life, what we'd really like to be able to do through anxiety. So, anxiety is, it's a signal. Here's a really good metaphor. At least on the Texas highways here, on a lot of them, there is a white line as you go past that. You're driving down the highway, there's a white line on the right. On the other side of that white line, there's something that we call a rumble strip. And some of you may know what this is. You may have seen this before. It's kind of a Sherman tank corrugated chop in the asphalt that if you cross that white line and you hit it, it sends a vibration signal up through the tire all the way up through the car, and you feel it almost automatically, right? So what is the purpose of a rumble strip? And most people examining that would probably agree that it's a signal from the road that's designed to wake you up. It's designed to bring awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance that, hey, I have gone out of the appropriate acknowledged place of me driving. I am now out of homeostasis, right? And I am in danger of doing what? Running off the side of the road, spinning out, something along those lines. So what do? Well, I adjust. I adjust something because of the communication. So when we look at the body, and we can go through this many times, and I think it's helpful for people to remember. When we look at things like the effectiveness of cognitive therapy, we're going to explain why that kind of works, but it's a thought that creates a cascade of neurological activity where it sends a signal that's then broadcast somewhere in the body, and that we call that an emotion, okay? So there's patterns to how this shows up, and this is right in line with what we're in the field of polyvagal theory. We're learning that trauma specifically is not necessarily something that you can just heal with a cognitive aspect of is this true or not, or even affirmations. That it's a much more visceral, body-based reaction that we can't control a lot of the times because the body keeps score and the body is in kind of gate cycle. It's trying to protect. It's kind of like if you touch a hot stove for the first time. Okay, well, there's a reason why suddenly now you're programmed, and now you don't really have to think about it. Even the sensors that it's hot, it doesn't make it past the central nervous system, and we have kind of a reaction. So there's those type of reactions on a whole subconscious level of things that are happening within the body all by themselves. So when we look at that, and we look at how we're holding anxiety, in other words, how a signal gets sent to the body or how it's programmed and being held in the body, one of the first questions that I would ask somebody that had anxiety is, Where in the body are you holding that? And one of the reasons why I want to know that, and this is my experience as a somatic processing therapist, is there's patterns. And even though we're all very subjective, we're all very, very special, there does seem to be some very objective common patterns that I have seen in my work with people in treating trauma, facilitating the healing of trauma. And here's some of those patterns. If they feel something in the head, frequently this has to do with control or confusion. So this can be anything from temporalis muscle, pressure headaches, to TMJ, grinding of the teeth or clenching, to levator scapula, the world's on my shoulder, traps, all that kind of aspects. And then when we feel something here in the neck, moving into the esophageal, down into really aspects of the top of the vagus nerve also, but definitely around the throat. This has to do with I cannot authentically express myself the way that I would like to. We see this a lot in people that have, in childhood trauma, where they're being overpowered, sexual trauma, a lot of aspects where our voice is taken away in some way. All right. Now we go down into the chest, and this is just a really, really, most people can see it's a rich area, right? So there's all kinds of stuff going on here. One would be patterns of tightness, which could indicate anger. That's a common one. You can see how that could pair with control, or being confused, not having control pretty quickly, being frustrated because we don't understand as well. And then anger is always hiding what underneath? Sadness, hurt, some form of hurt. And so we now have several studies that show us that heartache or heartbreak is a signal from the brain down into the vagus nerve, polyvagal theory, that can feel like a giant gaping hole in our chest. If you've ever been through a major heartbreak, you know what I'm talking about. Or like a giant wound, or maybe like an elephant sitting on our chest, or some version of tension or heaviness or density here that's a biological signal that's saying, look, in the mind of the story of how I continue life, I'm not safe, do something about it. It's an evolutionary signal that's asking us to pay attention. Pain is a guide. Suffering is a choice. So listening to that pain, it'll begin guiding us what we actually need to do pretty quickly, actually. And then we go down here into the solar plexus, and there's just so many variations of this. But, generally, this can also mean I'm cold, yes, but don't take my power away from me. I can't tell you, every single male I worked with in the county jail systems, this was the first 1 to 2 minutes. I don't know who you are. Don't take my power. But we all can also see the parallels to, butterflies, having to speak in public, not having power, and how that compare with control. So people can be feeling things all over the body as well. In fact, when somebody's really, really upregulated, they may say, I feel it everywhere. And so this is an opportunity for us to kind of take a breath, drop down into the body, and maybe we begin presenting them choices like, well, do you feel it more in the head or more in the neck? More in the neck, more in the chest, more in the chest, more in the stomach, more in the peripherals. Like, where do you feel it? And what are the juicy words for you? We don't always want to put words in people's mouths as far as description. At the same time, we're introducing them usually to a completely new realm of how they're even perceiving themselves, and to a new vocabulary, a new descriptive language of how to describe what's going on. When I ask, how are you suffering? They're like, well, I'm angry. Well, that's an emotion word. It's not a felt sense word. Or they're, I'm upset because, and there's a whole story, right? So we want to begin differentiating between cognitive, emotional, sensation, right? Cognitive thought, that's a top-down processing. Sensation, the felt sense, that's a bottom-up processing. Well, the cognitive, we can be in an abstract story and we can be in a story of 20 years from now, or in a story of 20 years back. We can be completely abstract reality, and we certainly aren't here, right? But as we begin paying attention to what the body is feeling, well, we only have one body and it's only here. So that immediately brings us out of a very specific type of brain activity, takes us out of the default mode of narrative and into the experiential mode of brain activity of being here now. And when we do that, we're now feeling where the pain actually is. Because if we have mental emotional suffering, here's the golden rule. There are no painful thoughts. There's a thought that creates a cascade of neurological activity that then broadcasts what we call an emotion from somewhere in the body, and the body keeps score. If you can shift the charge in the body, thoughts, it's just a thought. It's just a story. It always was just a story. The question is it a story that's got juice in your body? If it ain't got no juice, it's just a story. And that's where we're headed towards, is how to squeeze or how to decharge or how to melt or how to dissolve the charge that's associated with whatever the suffering memory or pattern or phobia or anxiety actually is. Make sense? Okay, so we go past that white line, we hit that rumble strip. This is the rumble strip. We just gave you a whole bunch of examples of the rumble strip. How do we treat that in modern medical aspects? Well, one of the ways that's frequently is people are given, a Xanax. They're given something that's a benzodiazepine, a benzo. Well, what is that? Well, that is a medication that affects the neurotransmitter GABA. Well, what is GABA? Well, it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that we're basically giving a medication that increases the effect of GABA. So it's increasing the inhibition. So what we're essentially doing is we have a rumble strip that's actually telling us this is what's going on and what needs to be processed. Pain, it gives us some uncomfortability that is a guide that will actually show us how to heal, and we're giving a medication to shut off that signal. We've now just shut off the guide. So, and most people don't like the way that they feel, but is there immediate relief? For sure, and that's why opiates are really popular as well, for us to increase the amount of dopamine. And that's what we're doing with stimulants and ADHD medication also. We're increasing the amount of dopamine instead of asking bigger questions like, why don't I have enough dopamine? Are there any natural ways for me to make dopamine? And is there any conflict within the way that my abstract human processing is holding my reality, that if it was resolved, my dopamine would be just fine? Well, we've got to be able to look. And unfortunately, we have this mental health stigma that says it's not okay to not be okay. In fact, we frequently shame people for not being okay in so many different ways. Well, that's not okay. It's not okay to rage. It's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be a victim in a lot of ways. And parts of that I would even agree with. But if we don't create places where it's safe for people to have regular, everyday, normal emotions that are part of what needs to be felt. You can't leave a place that you never allow yourself to be, and what you resist persists, and it's always going to be there. And now we're developing layers of mental abstract reality to hide what's actually here that we could have gotten rid of and still can and are built to do very, very rapidly. So we need to be able to pay attention to the rumble strip and not shut it off. I mean, this is why when I work with people in trauma, a lot of times I will, of course, we want to make sure that they're able to handle it and safety and giving them a lot of control. I will want them to come off of medication so that we can actually be in a baseline and go, this is what's here, and we're not synthetically blocking any of the information that's actually very quickly going to guide us in what needs to be processed within the body, how the body is holding that particular story as well. So this is my talk on the rumble strip and anxiety. I hope it's been educational. I hope it's enlightened you about what's actually possible and to use the amazing guides that this human body has for you, that you're built to heal, and you can do so very rapidly. It is my desire to show people how you can get this done because it's your birthright. It's who we are. And instead of using these advanced memories and advanced imaginations to be in our own way, what if we started using them in order to heal ourselves, because that's what we're designed to do. All right. God bless. We'll see you in the next section, guys. Take care.